I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right. Welcome, all my garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people to Let's Get Growing, our weekly gardening live cast right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. We've got a really awesome show for you today. Today is actually our very first Sunday edition book club. We've got joining with us here later in the show, Ellen Zachos, our very first book club member, for her book, Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying, an absolute beginner's guide to identifying 40 edible wild plants. So, really looking forward to our very first book club. One of the things that just a big fan of books, and also one of the really cool things about our book club too is that we get to have with us live each month here, and this is every third Sunday of the month too that we're doing this as well too. We get to have live with us our good friend of the show, Marc Boucher-Colbert. I'm really excited about that. So he's going to be our co-host of the monthly book club, and we've got some really exciting books and everything in store for you coming up throughout the gardening season, and definitely by starting with this really awesome book here that both of us have been really enjoying, How to Forage for Wild Foods by Ellen Zachos. So this will be really great. So we're going to get to feature a really cool book like this one, and then have the authors on with us later in the show to talk and discuss about the books and everything too, and then also later in the show. So stick around too till the end of the show as well, because we'll also be introducing next month's book for the book club, as well as giving away a copy of the book to everybody. I do have to give a warning though, that is we are going to do a book club giveaway. I gave away books last month. I gave away a copy of this book here, and the one thing I didn't think about in the giveaway though was that really for our budget on the show, we can really only offer them to all of our US viewers. So for all of our US viewers, I'm really so unfortunate, because we've got a lot of great viewers who watch our show from around the world: Canada, Australia, the UK, even some of our guests are, and books are from authors from other parts of the world as well too. But and I'm really bummed about that, because I didn't really think about it until we had our last month's winner was from Canada, Brampton Gardner. Rochelle won our book, for How to Forage for Wild Foods, and she's from Canada, and so we figured that whole thing out there. So we did get her the book though. She's got the book, and did send me a message and thank me for the book and everything recently. So we did get it out there for our first winner, but going forward it'll have to be US only. So we'll do that at the end of the show when we announce next month's book club book feature, and it's a really great one, really awesome, and looking forward to it as well. And then also too, again, we are a Saturday and Sunday show. So yesterday we had a really great show. We had with us the Mocha gardener, Ashley Thomas, joined with me again. She was a guest last season on the show, and we had just such a great conversation. I wanted to make sure we brought her back for a great conversation on our Saturday show again, and it was really awesome. So I really encourage you to go check that out as well too. We talked about all sorts of really great things, when it comes to gardening and growing, and just food system, all sorts of just really got into a whole bunch of really good stuff. So definitely go check that out, as well as we had joining with us too another return guest. We had young Nathan joining with us with his father Robert and their new channel this year, Steam Puzzle. And Nathan and his father had a channel last year when they were on the show called Growing with Nathan, and they do and feature all sorts of the things that they grow together as a kind of father-son duo on YouTube, doing all sorts of things in the STEAM area of science, technology, engineering, and of course agriculture, and growing plants and all of that sort of stuff as well. So we had a really great conversation with them, and got to catch up with Nathan. It was really awesome. He's just such a really, really fun young kid who's just enjoying getting to spend time with his dad, learning about all sorts of things, and especially getting to garden and grow food, which they do. Also hydroponics and all sorts of great fun things that they get into there as well. So it was a great show yesterday. So I encourage you all to go back and check that out as well too. So awesome, really great to have all of you here with us today. And if you are with us here, be sure to hit that like button, click the thumbs up there, as well as subscribe and share with all of your friends. Plus, also, one of the big things too I'm encouraging everybody to do too is get down into the comments section of our of the YouTube video part of this. I know everybody's here for the live and all of that, but if you get an opportunity, come down and drop a comment in. And when you click the like button and you leave comments and all of that, those interactions with our videos and our shows get and help us to be seen by more people in the YouTube algorithm. So I really encourage everybody to do that sort of thing too. That's a really great way to help us out and to help us grow the show here as well too. So definitely do that here. And let's see who we got joining with us today. I saw we got Rick joining with us again. Hello, Rick. Great to see you here. In fact, here's another example. Rick from Australia joining with us here. Heather. Hi, Heather. How you doing? How you doing? Great to have you here with us today. And of course, we've got with us Jay joining us from Canada, Ontario, Canada, moderating our chat. Jay, the greatest moderator on YouTube, definitely doing some really awesome work, putting in links and all of that sort of stuff for us as we're talking and interviewing our guests, and things come up, and Jay just puts out some really great information and links for us all to be able to follow along. So awesome to have you back with us, Jay. And let's see here. Riverdale Gardens. Hey, awesome to have you here. Great. Jersey girl in the house. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, here's a suggestion that Jay makes to what we're talking about here is perhaps ask international winners to help with shipping costs. Maybe that's something we could do. I mean, if you want to put in or something like that, and if you want to put the hashtag in that we give later on in the show for that, if you do that and you're picked, then we'll just let international people know they can put the hashtag in if they want to cover the cost, if that's something that they want to do to still participate. That's probably a really great idea, Jay. Thank you there. Appreciate that. Awesome. Yeah. So great to have everybody here. Hope everybody's been doing really well, and getting to get out there and grow and garden and do all sorts of things that we've got to get done right now. Believe me, I've been in overdrive for the last week or so, just doing all sorts of stuff. As I was talking about yesterday on the show, even we were planting out potatoes just the other day out at my friend's place, where we have some of these really big 20-foot by 40-foot garden plots that we're managing over at his front yard on this really cool corner lot that everybody gets to see, similar to what we got here with the place here too, which is really cool because really nice day out, everybody's out and about, and people are walking by, and it's so cool to hear people talk about and compliment the sort of things that we've got growing there. Because right now too, we've got and I showed in weeks back when they were really small, just coming out of winter. The garlic that we planted out last fall, and it's really starting to take off and grow right now. So it looks really lush with all of these just garlic leaves and growth all over in the middle of the garden plot that we have. So people are walking by complimenting everything about how cool it looks having that sort of stuff growing out in the front yard. That's why I really encourage people, man, it's one way to really connect with your neighbors in your community is to have a front yard garden like that, because to a lot of folks out in your neighborhood and in your community, that's something that's really kind of interesting and fun and can really kind of bring about some conversation with everybody. And that was something that we were talking about a little bit too on yesterday's show as well, is that kind of great kind of connection we get through our garden with other people, because people really enjoy that sort of stuff as well too. So that's one of the ways that some of the effort we put into our gardens pays off, is by getting some of those connections with people. All right. And one other thing I wanted to talk about too, real quick, before we get moving on with the show here, is I had kind of a surprise when I came into what is my living room studio space here, just before I was starting the show yesterday. And I was kind of wandering around and looking at the plants and checking things out, and noticed right here, and you can see it right off screen here, it's just these little kind of white balls that are right here popping out here. They're just little florets of these little flowers coming off of my corn plant that's right here. I've got a corn plant that kind of sits right off the camera screen right there, and it's produced a flower stem and these florets, and it's probably getting ready to bloom here. Maybe I would say, hopefully in the next few days, all of these will just open up, and all of these hundreds of little flowers will open up. And one of the reasons why this just really, really excites me and gets me going when I see this is, and I've been lucky to have this happen like a couple of times, once before with this corn plant, and then I had one previously years before as well too, when I lived at another place, and that's when I first got to see and experience the corn plant flower. And if you get one, you're really lucky, because it's just it produces one of the most amazing scents. And I believe, I'm trying to remember what that is. It's what the name actually is, because it has to do with the scent that it has, because it's really just explode. I don't know, I would say explosive. It really does, because it just comes on the scene and it just fills your house with this amazing smell, and just just a really great perfume of a flower. So when you walk in your house, it's like you just get boom, and it just hits you. And if you and like where I lived when I first lived in this other place that I lived in was an apartment. So when I opened the door, my neighbors could smell this plant as well too, and this flower that it produces. And so, I've got to have one other one before. It was a couple of years back that I had this corn plant actually produce one too. So here I am, lucky again too. And they don't produce them very often too, is the case as well too. So when it does happen, it's just a really great thing to kind of get to experience. So one of the reasons why I encourage you too, if you don't have a corn plant, go find one, because maybe someday you'll be lucky enough to get to experience that as well too. So really, really exciting for my plant here and in the next couple of weeks. Right on, right on. So let's see here. Time to move on with the show. Let's get going here, because I'm really excited about this. One of the cool things about getting to do our monthly garden club, like I was mentioning just a little bit earlier, is that we get to have our good friend Marc join with us on the show here for the In the Garden segment. All right. Let's welcome Marc to the Marc NBC to the show. How's it going, Mark? How you doing?
And there we go. My mic
Oh,
all of a sudden. Hey, how are you, Enoch? Good to see you today. Really happy to be here.
yeah, yeah, awesome, man. Like I was just saying in the introduction and everything, it's a great to have you here for both the in the garden segment here where we can kind of catch up a little bit, talk about what's going on in the garden for you, as well as have you back here in a little bit as the co-host of our book club, which I think was just something that was really cool, something I thought about last year as well. And in, as I was developing and thinking about ideas for the show, just something we didn't implement, but I was so glad that we kind of brought the idea back and really just put it together for this year.
Oh no, that's going to be big. I'm just absolutely over the moon excited about the book group, and this our first guest is going to be great. So, I guess we got to talk about In the Garden first, but I just want to jump into that book.
I know exactly. Like I say it's really cool. And again, for us, the very first one we did want to get started last month, but with the just trying to get things up and running, and creating and making and getting things to time out right with everything, we just decided to make sure we got it started up for this month, and it's just really exciting to be here today. But like you said, it's In the Garden time. We're here with NBC. We want to talk about In the Garden. One of the cool things about having you here is that you got several different cool spaces that you're growing in and doing and projects and that sort of stuff. So it's great to be able to have you here to talk about and catch up with that. So what are some of the great things you've got going on? First, let's just start right at home, because I was just talking about front yard gardens just a moment ago. One of the cool things is, and I know you have a front yard garden at your home,
Yep.
is that we get this really cool kind of connection with people who just walking by, neighbors, other community members who live, maybe a little bit further, if they're walking through our neighborhood, get to notice what we're doing right out front. So it's a very public facing type of thing. But I constantly get people who are walking by and walking through, like just saying how cool it is and how much they enjoy the space.
Well, Enoch, because you and I are going to be talking about future books at the after we sign off today, I happen to have a stack, and since you mentioned it, I'm just going to pull out this one, Edible Estates. This is
Yeah.
a book by a guy named Fritz Haig, who's I think an LA architect. He did this project of getting people to rip up their front lawns in various parts of the country and
Hmm.
plant gardens out on the front lawn. And he has a description in here of front yard gardeners as kind of actors who are acting out this agricultural drama for all to see. So as people walk by, they're getting to get in touch with the rhythms of plant life through the efforts of these front yard gardeners. So you're doing that. I was actually out in my front yard garden this morning. I'm planting a new thing for me. I've never grown chickpeas before. And I found these really amazing black, chickpeas, garbanzo beans, same thing.
Hmm.
Most usually we associate chickpeas with the tan, the kind of large seeded tan chickpea, but apparently there's a whole bunch of different kinds. And I found from Adaptive Seeds, which is a local seed company here in Oregon, a black, I believe it's called black Sicilian chickpea. It's a little smaller than the typical chickpea that you get in a can. It's jet black, kind of a dull jet black. The things look absolutely beautiful. I've planted them in pots, and they're about the greens. It's a very kind of a lacy green that looks a little bit like vetch, if you've ever grown vetch as a cover crop. It's a pea family member. And these things look awesome. I just planted them in a container today with some bone meal out of my front yard. They're I got greens about 6 inches tall from my grow room, and then they've been hardened off outside, adjusted to the temperatures and the light. And now I'm planting them outside. I can't wait. Uh, I planted them in containers at the edge of my garden because at some point I'm going to start to lighten up on the water as they're maturing and drying down. So I didn't want to put them in the main part of my garden that I would be watering constantly, just because I want that. I'm thinking about the dry. These are things that I'm going to harvest dry toward the end of the season. So I want to let them dry down a little bit and not be getting water on them and encouraging mold and stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that. I always like to try something new and alongside all my standards. And so this is one area where I'm touching really into something new. And I'm hoping come fall, I mean, imagine making like a black garbanzo dip, totally jet black, maybe with like red
Yeah.
sticking out of it. The contrast of that, it would be looking so good on the plate. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really excited about that. You use the word exploding, and oh my God, everything exploding. We've had a week or two of great weather up here in Portland. Temperatures have been in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, more or less. We're lacking a little bit of our usual spring rain. That's sometimes a little bit of a concern, but boy, you can't argue with a week of sunny 70 weather, man. So things are exploding in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff I've been doing at school is starting to manage cover crops. And that's a really interesting and really important part of gardening is the stuff that we do in the off season to build and nourish the soil. And I use cover crops year round, not only to nourish the soil, but also to outcompete other weeds that might grow in the garden. So
Yeah.
let me give you an example. So right now I'm cutting down things like rye and vetch and peas that were overwintering. So some of that stuff is beds that I'm going to plant up real soon to summer crops like tomatoes and corn and even some potatoes I'm doing right now. So getting rid of some of that cover crop in there, letting it break down, giving it about a month to break down before I start planting some of these warmer weather things. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one level of cover cropping. Other stuff, I'm looking toward the summer and seeing like what could I plant during the summer, right on the edge. Almost, I might wait another couple of weeks for the summer cover crops. But things like buckwheat, I just got myself some alfalfa, which fixes a huge amount of nitrogen in the soil. So, and I'm thinking like grow the alfalfa now, cut that down, and then plant garlic there for the fall and winter. So it has a nice healthy supply of nitrogen from, basically that I've harvested from the air using this alfalfa as a help. So really getting excited about cover crops. This year or last year, I bought myself a scythe. If people don't know what a scythe is, think of the images of the Grim Reaper that you've seen at Halloween or whenever. And that large curved blade, that's a scythe. And the traditional ones come with an interestingly curved handle. And this is the way things got mowed down for probably hundreds of years before the advent of mechanical mowers. And there's an art to it. There's an art to the body movement involved, but it is wonderful. You can chew through lots of greenery that way. And it works really well for stuff that's got a firm stalk like rye or anything that's peas. It's great for getting rid of cover crops. And,
Yeah.
I really like the fact that I don't have to have a loud polluting mower going, even a weed whacker. It's just nice to have a quiet tool, and it's very
Yeah.
effective. You got to keep it sharpened. You got to take a little whetstone out in your pocket or a file, but just you keep it sharp, and man, it's you, your body, and the grass, and you're just mowing it down. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, totally, definitely. I get that for sure. And in fact, I think that's something, one of the questions coming up for the channel today. Right on. So anyways, Marc, awesome to catch up with you here for our In the Garden segment this week. Like I was saying, having you here with us live, and also looking forward to catching up with you here in just a few minutes for our first monthly gardening book club meeting, basically, right? This is our first book club meeting.
I know.
And yep, and we've got Ellen Zachos joining with us here in just a few minutes to talk about that too. So I'm just really excited about digging in and talking about all of that here real soon. So I think we're just going to get moving on with that here.
Let's do it.
You got it. So I'll catch up with you in just a moment.
Okay, see you then.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our our weekly garden journals. And our incredible featured visits. All right, everybody. Let's bring back in with us Marc here. This is the first time for me working with this new setup. So right on. All right. So it's time to get started with our monthly book club here, where we're featuring this month How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying by Ellen Zachos. And so let's bring in Ellen here into the show there. Hi, Ellen. Thanks for joining with us.
Hello.
Ellen, welcome.
Hi.
Thank
Great
you.
to
Thank
have
you for
you
having
here
me.
with us. You betcha. You betcha. Really awesome to have you here with us. We've been talking a lot, especially throughout our social media. I know through Instagram and all of that, Marc, as well, too, how excited we are to talk with you about your book here.
Mhm.
Marc got to see you in a discussion you had up at the Seattle Northwest Flower and Garden Show that they have up
Right.
there in Seattle. So I've been really excited to have you here with us. So again, thanks for joining with us. And how about just introduce yourself there to everybody and let us know a little bit more about you.
My name's Ellen Zachos. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico now, but for most of my life, I was on the East Coast. I worked as a professional gardener in New York City for many years and taught there at the New York Botanical Garden. So that's my background. I came through foraging through the plant world. A lot of people come to it through food, which of course I also love, and some people come to it through their grandparents. But for me, I learned about plants as a gardener first, and then a friend introduced me to foraging, which really became the focus of my life very quickly.
Yeah. I see that this isn't your first book on foraging, right? Right.
No, it's actually it's my fourth book on foraging, and since that one came out, there's another one that's a journal in the same series. So
Awesome.
All right.
Well, I'm just going to jump in to say that when I saw you at the Northwest Flower and Garden Show, which is a real passion of mine, I love going up there. You were so well spoken, and the subject matter was so interesting to me that I just rushed over to the author's table afterward and got your book. And it just, even as once I picked it up, the materials, the size, the way it's laid out, the pictures, it's just so beautiful. Such a great book. So congratulations. It's really lovely to have that book, and I've learned a lot reading it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I can take no credit for the fact that it is a beautiful little package. That's all due to the people at Story Publishing. The content is mine, and I can take credit for that. But they have, it's got a waterproof cover, and it's small enough to fit in a backpack, and they really thought it through, I think. So I'm hoping it'll be useful to a lot of people, and I'm glad it was useful to you.
Oh yeah, it's a great book. Enoch, you want to jump in with a first question?
Actually, right off the bat, the first question that is, I think one of the cool things, you start off the whole book with a question. I thought I would start that off and ask you, actually.
Okay.
Your book starts off with the question, why would anyone want to forage when it's so much easier to go to the grocery store or a favorite neighborhood restaurant?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose if you ask any forager, their answers are probably going to be similar. But there's a bunch of different reasons. First of all, it gets you outside, and that's always a good thing. Anytime you can be outside rather than inside, I think that's a plus. Second of all, it's a good way to exercise. You are walking, you are looking, you are engaging with your surroundings. Those are all great things. But most importantly, the flavors are fantastic. I call them unbuyable flavors. These are things that you can't buy at the finest grocery store, no matter what their organic produce selection is like. You're never going to find milkweed shoots there. You're probably not going to find June berries. You're not going to find choke cherries. You're not going to find dock greens. You're just not going to find these things because they're either not profitable to grow or too difficult to ship. There are a lot of different reasons. And I think that anybody who appreciates growing their own food, if you have a vegetable garden, that you might take that even a step further and start thinking about foraging for wild foods as well, because obviously you already appreciate fresh food grown locally, harvested when it's at its peak, as opposed to being shipped and then treated with other things to make them look ripe, even when they don't taste ripe. So plus everything you forage for is organic. Nobody is out there, spraying pesticides on the milkweed. So you know that if you're foraging from a safe area that's not by a road or that's not on a golf course, where they do, of course, spray a lot of things. But if you're interested in local organic food and unbuyable flavors, foraging is a great activity.
I love that phrase unbuyable. Really stuck in my mind. That's a keeper. I love that.
I can't take credit for it. I did not make it up. I think it was my friend Casey Hill. Shout out to Casey in San Jose, California, who first said that phrase to me, and I took it and ran with it because I think it really makes it clear what we're talking about.
Well, all creatives steal from their friends and from other great sources, so no shame there. That's
okay.
Pass it on. I'm going to ask you a question about the title, because I got a laugh out of that phrase, without dying.
Yeah.
So it's clear, but it seems to say a lot. It seems to say that here's a competent source. Here's an authority that's going to help you navigate this area. It also says there's a potential threat out there. There may be some fear. There may be some misconception. So talk about that in terms of how you've encountered people with this idea of wild foods and foraging, and what the fears are, and how you lead people into this reality.
Human beings are afraid of a lot of different things. I'm afraid of things. I'm sure there are things that you're afraid of too. Basically, you should never put anything in your mouth if you're not 100% sure what it is. And I say that is a good thing to know about foraging. It's just also a good thing for life in general. Consider that a life lesson. But but the more research you do, the more classes you take, the more that you read, the better armed you are to make good decisions. And the title is supposed to be humorous in a way, but of course nobody wants to die, and nobody wants to be that person in the headlines, family of 5 dead after eating poisonous whatever. So it is important to know what you're harvesting, and there are some poisonous lookalikes out there. And most of the plants in this book were chosen because they are very easy to identify and they don't have a lot of poisonous lookalikes. But for example, when I'm talking about Queen Anne's lace, which is a delicious wild edible, both the roots and the flowers and the seeds, all three, and even the foliage you can eat. So, but it's in the Apiaceae family. It's a wild carrot, and the Apiaceae has some deadly toxic plants in it. Now, once you know what you're looking for, it is not difficult to tell the difference between poison hemlock and Queen Anne's lace. Once you know, but you have to know. So you read the little profile, and that should make you feel more confident. And it's important to be able to make those decisions and distinctions for yourself.
The queen has hairy legs.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. You either read that in the book, or you remember when I said it, or you knew it beforehand. I don't know, but that's it. You never forget that phrase. The queen has hairy legs. If the stem has hairs on it, it's not poison. It's not poison hemlock.
Yeah.
That was very memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on that, is what I was going to ask a little bit too, is that we've got, there's 40 of them. You've segmented 40 different plants for your book here. So I was going to ask you to touch on the 40 that you chose and why you chose those 40 specifically.
Well, first of all, I wanted these plants to be plants that almost anybody would be able to find near where they live. And, where I forage now in Santa Fe, New Mexico, our average rainfall is about 14 inches a year. And I came from the East Coast where it was more like 44 inches a year. And yet most of these plants I can still find here. So these are plants, most people consider or know that weeds are very successful. They can adapt to a lot of different growing conditions. They can survive in places where we wouldn't expect them to be able to survive. And most of the plants in here, moving towards the camera, there we go. Most of the plants in here are weeds. But the problem is when you say weed to someone, they think it's a plant that's not wanted or not useful. And these are definitely useful plants. And for foragers, they're also wanted plants. So they're easy to find pretty much all the way across the country, with a few exceptions. And that was the first reason I chose them. The second reason I chose them was because they're delicious. And the third reason I chose them was because most of them really do not have poisonous lookalikes. And I think the easiest way for people to get interested in foraging is if you can take away that fear and make them understand that they're not going to die because they eat a flower off of a plum tree. I think making this material accessible was very important. This is for beginners. It's a beginning forager's book. And those things all contributed to my choices.
Excellent.
That's cool. Maybe along that same line, like let's say you had a room full of friends, you're having a dinner party, room full of friends who were kind of interested yet maybe reluctant to become foragers. Can you create a little menu? What would you serve them that would really hook them? Like what do you, and you got to, here you can have a wide range. You can go beyond your book, but give us a little menu.
I do this all the time. And depending on how adventurous I think my friends are, I either tell them or do not tell them what they're eating until after they've eaten.
Okay.
So it's just, let's pretend it's autumn, because I actually did this once. I made an acorn and oyster mushroom soup for an opening course. And this guy he's my father's age, so he was probably in his, now he was older than my dad at the time. He was in his mid 80s, let's say. He was an old guy, set in his ways, not a forager. And what he said when he took a taste, because I said, I'm not going to tell you what it is. He took a taste and he said, I don't know what this is, Ellen, but it's freaking delicious. And I knew that my job was done, because that's the idea. If you can hook somebody with a flavor that's wonderful, that's a really good way to go. So I might start with an acorn and mushroom soup. It's very rich, it's hearty, it's comfort food, and it is delicious. I would be also hard pressed. I like to do little puff pastry shells with chopped mushrooms and some wild onions, wild garlic in it. That's also a nice opener. I would say, for my vegetable course, I would do a twist on spanakopita. I am Greek, and in Greece, you often find these pizzas made not just with spinach, but with all kinds of wild greens. So instead of spanakopita, which is spinach pie, I would make a hortopita, which is a greens pie. And you combine it with onions and some feta and layers of phyllo dough, and that's really great. Let me see. I'm a meat eater, so I would have a meat course. And pretty much how I don't hunt, even though I have nothing against hunting. I just never had anybody to teach me how. So I couldn't provide a wild protein, but my husband fishes. And we have a cabin on a wonderful trout stream. So if I were going to do all wild, I'd have his trout. Are you familiar with the herb called melalote or sweet clover?
I know it's in your book. I'm not.
It's got a kind of tarragon flavor to it. It's in that vanilla sort of flavor profile. So I would probably try some trout with some melalote on it as crumbled on top. because it really goes well with fish. It goes well with salmon also, but since I can get the trout out of the stream, that's what I would do. And dessert, of course, is where I'd really have fun because there's so many things. But the first thing that comes to mind, because it's plum season, the plums are in bloom here right now. And I like to infuse cream with plum blossoms and then do a panna cotta. It's superb. It's really, you could do that with rose petals as well. It works with any fragrant edible flower. And then you might want a little after dinner drink. Of course, I forgot the opening cocktail, and I'm very interested in cocktails.
Yeah.
But I'd say, one of the choke cherries grow all over the place out here. They're a very drought resistant tree. A lot of the native peoples in this part of the country use them for jellies and syrups and pemmican. But what I like to do is infuse them in rye whiskey with a little bit of raw brown sugar. And it infuses for like 3 months, and then I strain it off. And it makes a just barely sweet, wonderfully fruity, but also the spiciness of the rye comes through. And that's a great sort of digestif for after dinner. So that's just off the top of my head, that's what I would.
Man.
When's the restaurant opening?
I know. Let's go. Wow, I'm telling you.
I'm definitely buying your book on booze next. So that's the next.
That's a good one.
I saw on the back of the book that there's, what is it called? It's a wild-crafted cocktail. Yeah, that's on my short list. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I love it too. And that's, I think, one of the great things about having Marc with us though too, there is I'm not myself just a foodie, so I don't, but hearing you talk about it, boy, I'm telling you, my mouth starts watering. I'm thinking, boy, I love eating food, but the crafting of it and all of that sort of thing, it's just, that sounds pretty amazing what you come up with there for sure. One of the things is kind of talking about a little bit about plants and the things we're talking about in your book here. You have a nice little section talking about plant parts. And then I know in foraging and all of that, that's really kind of important too. What part's the useful part? Is the whole thing useful? I know, like, I've got some dandelions right here. I just actually went and pulled out of the front yard here as I was getting ready for the show. And I know dandelions, at least from my understanding, is that the whole thing's useful from root to flower. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of plant parts when we're talking about foraging.
Yeah, well, some plants have parts that are edible and other plants that are poisonous. Some plants have parts that are only edible for a certain season. And some plants have parts that are edible all the time, but only taste great in a certain season. So it's important to know when to harvest what. And for example, we all know that before we started flying in asparagus from the southern hemisphere, it was mostly a spring vegetable. It came up in spring. And by the time the weather gets really warm, it starts to branch, and then it sends out those feathery fronds, and then it puts out its fruit. And once it starts to branch, it's pretty fibrous and tough and not really that delicious. So asparagus had a season, just like tomatoes used to have a season. Now we expect to get everything all year round because we mostly can, depending on where we shop. But let's pretend we can't. Let's pretend this was 100 years ago when we were buying locally or growing our own, in which case we would be much more in touch with the seasonality of our food. And that same seasonality applies to wild food in just the same way that it does store-bought food. So just as asparagus is a spring vegetable and tomatoes are a late summer delicacy, so is, let's say, pokeweed, a spring vegetable. Once that stem starts to branch and the plant starts to flower, not only is it not tasty to eat, but it could cause some gastric upset. You're not going to find choke cherries in the spring. Those ripen in late August to September, depending on where you are. So the part of the plant that you're harvesting has a specific season, and you have to know when that is in order to harvest productively.
That's well said. Your one thing I really found interesting to follow up on that is this idea of the non-calendrical approach to the seasons. And I
Yeah.
think that was really well said, because we're so geared in our modern world to the pages of the calendar and the dates of the calendar, and yet the natural world is operating on its own cycle. And just because we hit the vernal equinox or the autumnal equinox it doesn't really mean anything necessarily. It's like you have to be in touch with what's going on. So maybe you can speak a little bit more about that.
Well, I'd love to. And first of all, I want to say, okay, Mark, where are you located and what was the temperature when you got up this morning?
I'm in Portland, Oregon, and it probably was about 48 or something when I got up.
Okay. Enoch, what about you?
I am actually just Southern Oregon, and when I got up, I would probably say it's about 40.
Okay, well, I woke
We're
up in Pecos, New Mexico, and it was 28.
Yeah.
So it's the same date. It's April 21st for all of us. Technically, it's spring. But you know what? There's not a darn thing. Not even the trees are in bud out in Pecos. I'm harvesting dandelion greens and dock greens and mallow greens, and that is it. And those are all perennial plants that can tolerate a frost. But you guys, my dandelions aren't in flower. They are barely putting up green. It's going to be another couple of weeks before I see dandelion flowers. So the idea of not being bound by a calendar date, but getting to know your own environment is a really helpful thing. Because if you say, oh, well, it's the beginning of April, I can go out and harvest blah, blah, blah. Well, great for you, but it's going to be another 3 or 4 weeks for me. Yeah. And it's important to know that.
And it seems like it varies quite a bit from year to year too. So you can't even settle into the certainty of like, it's the beginning of April for me, this is what I can get, because it may be different for us. We can get more or less rain. We've had snowstorms in April before, but many years it's like this. We've had many weeks of beautiful mild weather. So it's really variable each year as well.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because the book that just came out is this journal, and it's in the same Without Dying series. But the thing that I hope is going to be helpful relates exactly to what you just said, how much it changes from year to year. And how are you supposed to remember that, last year I harvested musk mustard in March, but this year it's beginning of April and it really isn't even in flower yet. So you can remember it maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, but for the history of all the time you've been foraging, it's kind of hard to do that. And if you can write it down and keep track of when you found what, and was it in good condition, and how did it taste, those are all things that are going to make you a better and more effective forager, because there's no point in going out looking for something if it's not ready yet.
There's a Chinese proverb that I've always remembered: the palest ink is better than the most retentive memory.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Especially because when you get to be my age, the memory's not so retentive anymore.
I feel you there.
I could definitely agree with that. That's for sure. So when it comes to let's get back to one of the cool things I like about the book too here. Again, it's foraging for wild foods without dying. Is, it does really have and feature in these poisonous lookalikes. I want to talk just a little bit more about those, because this is kind of the apprehension I think a lot of people would have when it comes to foraging or doing that, and people would tend to just, well, I'll just go to the store, because it's a lot easier to think about than worrying about what it is that something might look like something else. So I think that's a great feature of the book, is to really kind of to make sure that that we know exactly what those are for those individual different types of things we might be out foraging.
No, that's absolutely true. And once the fear is taken away, hopefully the enthusiasm can take over.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of plants in here that do have poisonous lookalikes. I did mention the Queen Anne's lace, and it's got the poison hemlock, but I really tried very hard to pick plants that did not have a lot of poisonous lookalikes, so that people would not be fearful when they're going out for the first or second or third times.
Yeah, hopefully you want to start with something low bar that's pretty pretty non-noxious, and then work into those more complicated ones later on.
Yeah, when you have a little more experience.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Experience level. I guess in a similar sense too, is where, foraging, it also goes into the mushroom world too, as well, for folks who are out there doing mushrooms. I think most
Oh
all of
yeah,
that same sort of stuff applies as well, right?
absolutely. And in fact, the first book in this series was called How to Forage for Wild Mushrooms Without Dying. And it was so successful that they decided to continue the series. I think mushrooms, and rightfully so, probably are scarier to most people than plants. And I can't say for sure that there are more deadly or mushrooms or dangerous mushrooms than there are plants, but they're definitely trickier to identify. You often have to take a spore print, and that's a little bit trickier. The parts of it's not a plant, but the parts of the mushroom are smaller. The descriptors that are used for how the gills are arranged can be tricky for beginners. It's a little bit easier, I think, to start with plants.
Another saying comes to mind about mushroom hunters: there's old mushroom hunters and bold mushroom hunters, but no old bold mushroom hunters.
Yes, I think that's probably true. I personally have passed up many delicious mushrooms because I wasn't 100% sure. And did I regret it afterwards? Yes, but if I had been wrong, I might be dead. So
Yeah.
I'd rather have a few regrets.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like is to say in there too, real quick on that, is that it's not 99% sure,
Yeah,
100% sure.
yeah. It's good to hear you saying you've passed up things, because that's I think instructive for people listening and for us too.
Yeah.
I have a question a little bit about the globalized world we live in. You mentioned a couple of these things that plants that have probably migrated up here and become weeds are actually a part of another culture's culinary heritage. And I wonder, do you, either through your own personal travels or reading, do you draw inspiration from what you see other cultures cooking and eating to get a sense of a plant and know how to use it?
Absolutely. And in fact, one comes to mind. Do you know the website Atlas Obscura?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yes.
Yeah, they're all about food, and it's very interesting to me because I love food. But they published a recipe maybe a year, 2 years ago, an old recipe from Tsarist Russia that is a cake that doesn't require baking, and it's made with 3 ingredients. It's made with maybe only 2 ingredients: sour apples and 3 sour apples, sugar, and egg whites.
Okay.
And I thought, sour apples, I bet I could do that with crab apples.
Yes.
So of course I did. And it's just and it was so fascinating to me to read about this process. You beat everything up, you whip the eggs, you don't bake it, you dehydrate it in a dehydrator for like 4 hours at 150 degrees or 100. I have to check the recipe and go back. And then you cut it and you reform it and you dehydrate it again. And then it lasts for like in a box on the counter for weeks. It never goes bad. Sugar acts as a preservative. It's been thoroughly dried out, so there's no moisture in there to help it. And it's delicious, and you don't get tea. Now, this is a recipe that I don't know if Americans know about, and if it weren't for Gastro Obscura, I wouldn't know about it. But that's just one example of a recipe that comes from another culture that figured out how to use what they had on hand and make something delicious out of it. And I love discovering stuff like that.
That's great. And yeah, that website, I'm going to go rush there and have a good look after this and see what I can find. But yeah, it's great to be inspired by the cultures. And, especially since plants have moved around so much, we're often finding that our weeds or invasives may be another culture's staple or a common item in their produce markets. And that can be motivating, I think, to find some recipes or ways to deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I went to Japan, I was astonished that chrysanthemum greens and hosta shoots were normal vegetables there. Who knew? I didn't know. Well, actually, I did know about the hosta shoots. I mean, I knew they were edible, but I didn't know that they were actually cultivated as a vegetable. They tend to grow them blanched, the way you sometimes see asparagus sold blanched in the spring, with the covered so that they can't photosynthesize and the stems are white. You don't have to do that. You can eat your hosta shoots right out of the garden, but that's what they do there.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like, that idea that, culturally, a lot of these sort of things are more normalized than they are, in other places, and that's something
Mm-hmm.
we need to discover ourselves a little bit more. And I say
Yeah.
that too because again, I come from more of that, uh, you know, regular regular Joe figuring out gardening and coming to the food system, kind of thing, and learning about things. And you kind of touched on that just a little bit earlier too, about how certain people come to that. And for me, that was, through gardening and through learning about different things that I could grow and eat myself versus what I could get at the grocery store. That was a great experience for me to learn that as well. So then I've come to learn about, like I said, dandelions, as far as those sort of things that you can forage for, and get outside of growing in your own garden. And I think, one of the cool things I always learned is that like a weed is just basically a plant that's, I guess, out of place. Anything can really be a weed ultimately when we're thinking about that word. And even like I tell people, I even have to pull tomatoes and peppers as weeds out of my garden because one will fall in there and I'll get 1,000 of them popping up the next season. I can't grow 1,000 of them, so I got to pull them out. So those are weeds at that point too. Anyways, I wanted these here, and they're segmented in different categories. And so I wanted to ask you, out of these ones that you feature in your book, what are some of your top favorites that you like out of this? I mean, because
Okay. Well,
I don't think they're listed in a top 10 or a top this and
no.
that. So I thought maybe I'd ask you, what are some of your favorite ones out of here?
Well, I have a lot, but I'm going to be
Mhm.
seasonal about this. Maybe where you are, they're up already. For me, in the next couple of weeks, stinging nettles will be coming into season, and
Oh,
I really
yes.
love stinging nettles. They've got such a rich flavor. It's like spinach on steroids. They as soon as you blanch them in boiling water or dry them, I prefer to blanch them. They lose their stingers, so don't worry that you're gonna have these stingers in your throat. Um, that's a delicious green, and I love to harvest as much as I can and blanch and freeze that so I can use it year round. But milkweed is another favorite of mine, and I consider that to be an edible superstar because it has so many edible parts. The first thing to come up, the shoots in the spring, people say, oh, it's just like asparagus. No, it is not just like asparagus. You can cook it just like asparagus because it's a shoot, just like asparagus is a shoot. But the flavor is very different and wonderful. And then you can go on and you can harvest the immature flower buds, the mature flowers, the immature seed pods. So that plant will take you right from spring through midsummer and provide a lot of good eating. I love wild garlic, and ramps are a controversial thing to forage. Some people feel that it's too endangered to be harvested sustainably. I do not agree with that. I think there are healthy populations which can be foraged from sustainably, and there are some very sparse populations which should not be harvested from. But if you're worried about that, wild garlic, Allium vineale, is considered highly invasive in this country, and I think it tastes just as good. I don't know why people make such a big deal out of ramps when they can go out there. Wild garlic is growing in probably half the lawns in this country, and it's delicious. And I harvest that every spring and then dry it and use that in cooking or as garlic powder. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, there's that. Oh, there's so many good things. I love evening primrose root, which I harvest early spring before top growth starts, or in the fall. It's a biennial, and you want to either get it at the end of its first season or the beginning of its second season. And it's a great like mashed vegetable instead of mashed potatoes. It's really tasty. I keep thinking, oh, June berries. Do you have it? You have Amelancher, yes, because they're called Saskatoons, so I know they grow on the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
That's a great fruit. Nobody sells June berries, Saskatoon berries. Well, actually, I think they're now being farmed maybe commercially in Canada. I'm not sure, but it's still grown mostly as an ornamental tree, and yet the fruit it's so delicious.
Wow.
Right on. Yeah, lots of awesome ones too, and things I didn't, I'm again not thinking about and thought about So as I'm going through the book, I'm thinking like you're talking about, and I was reading about the wild garlic there you're talking about, and I was like, oh, it's that prevalent. How do I not
Yeah.
notice this?
Well,
So I'm definitely going to be out going and looking around for wild garlic, as it's one of my favorite things. I love just growing in my garden.
I bet you'll find it. I bet you will.
Ellen, I'll ask you one final question. I know, yeah, I've been a lifelong gardener. Well, not a lifelong, but last 30 years, an avid gardener. And, one of the things that if you're recommending gardening to somebody, you have to sort of prepare them for is that you're going to get these amazing fresh tastes. Yes, you're going to get things that you can grow that nobody else will have in their garden or that you can get in a supermarket. But there's a tail end of processing, cleaning, preparing, cooking. You have to be ready for that kind of too. Now, just growing is not the end of the story. And I know the same thing is true from mushroom hunting. Like you can go out and have a great day getting all these mushrooms. Then you come home at night and it's like, I got to brush all these things off. This is going to take hours. So how do you structure your time in terms of this? Do you dedicate certain weekends, certain afternoons to going out? How do you do this?
Well, first of all, I'm going to circle back to what you said about mushrooms. Put down the brush, just throw them in water and let them soak. It's a myth that I would love to bust, that you can't clean mushrooms in water.
Thank you.
Alton Brown says it's true. Jacques Pepin says it's true. The fact is, you wash them and then you dry saute them. The water comes out and then you cook them however you want. You save yourself a lot of time.
Okay, thanks for that.
But moving on, processing is a lot of work. But think of it this way. If you had to do all the work of growing those plants in your garden and then process them, that would be work times 2.
Yeah.
Foraging, you didn't have to work growing them, but you do have to process, and you did have to go out and find them. I tend to process what I can, but oftentimes, like if I went to my freezer right now, there would be stuff in there. There's acorns from last fall that I haven't processed yet. Mm-hmm. So I do the first thing. I will, if I came back from Pecos this morning with some greens that I'd harvested from the front yard. So I washed them, blanched them, and they're in the freezer. I won't do any more with them until I'm ready to cook them. Okay. So you do the bare minimum, and then if I'm harvesting fruit, I'll wait until I have enough to make a jam or a jelly or a mostarda or something. So most of that stuff can be cleaned and frozen or cleaned and dehydrated until you have time to work with it, because the actual processing is very time consuming.
Right.
But delicious.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? We all make an effort to get some kind of object that we want, whether it's like spending time in the gym to get healthy or whatever. So I think in this case, it's like as you get a taste for these delicious foods, you become more and more willing to make the effort because you just know what the payoff is.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on, right on. Yeah, so much great stuff here in your book again, too, for everybody there. We've been featuring the book, How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying. Oh, I need to make sure I'm getting that in the middle there. We got with us Ellen Zachos again. Thank you so much for joining with us. I did want to ask you real quick, what's up next for you and where can everybody find you?
Well, they can find a lot of the plants and recipes that are in this book at my website, which is www.backyardforager.com. So if you don't want to buy the book without testing a few recipes, you can go ahead and do that on my website. My next book is actually not about foraging. It's called Mythic Plants, Potions and Poisons from the Gardens of the Gods. And it's about plants in Greek mythology and ancient Greek literature. And it was so much fun to write. It's been very exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
they
I guess
acorns in ancient Greece, by the way. They did eat acorns in ancient
Greece. Yes, awesome.
Yeah.
No, that sounds really awesome and fascinating for sure. I'm definitely have to look forward to that book and maybe having you back to talk about all of that, because that sounds really, really interesting.
Hey, Ellen, I'll just say in closing that, I sensed that you were gold when I heard you talk at Northwest Lawn Garden Show, and I think we just confirmed it. So thanks so much for a really great conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, so awesome to have you here, and thanks for going through all the trouble to get here for us too. I appreciate it. And again, everybody go check out, and I have a link down below in the description. And I'm not used to being in the middle like this with my screen cut off, but down below in the description, we have a link there to backyardforager.com for you to find Ellen and her books that she has, and check out even her upcoming book as well too. And again, thank you so much, Ellen, for joining with us here today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right. Yes. How was that, Mark? For our first book club meeting this.
Wait, are you telling me that we're going to get to be able to do this every month? Like have these amazing conversations with authors about great books? Is that what we're doing here, Enoch?
Yes, absolutely. That's great, huh? That was so cool. I learned so much about, like I said, and one of the cool things is that you get to come from that more foodie side of things and really be able to dig into that sort of stuff, which I think really was really awesome about the interview. Why I'm really glad to have you as a co-host now for doing this and helping me along through our interviews there too, so we can get to learn just a bit more even.
Well, as much as I like the information about gardening, I find that the people who do it, are just these people writing books and such. They're so fascinating, and to hear some of their stories and to hear their personal takes, you get a little bit of that from the book. Of course, there's definitely her sense of humor's in that and her vast knowledge, but then just to hear her formulate it on the fly with her whatever's going on presently for her, hearing about her new book, hearing about her journaling. Just all that kind of stuff, hearing about her dinner party. Oh my God, I was salivating during that whole thing. It's just so much fun.
I know, I'm telling you.
So I hope I hope all our viewers and people who are following along are just enjoying this even a fraction as much as we are. I think we're having the most fun here.
Yes, that is for sure. It's definitely, and again too, that's one of the reasons why I think it was something that we had to do, and especially in working together. We've done a lot of things together and all of that, but one of the things that we've always kind of come to in conversations are the books and the things that we're reading, because both me and you are both really avid readers and really enjoy that element of the knowledge we get about gardening and growing, and in this case today, foraging.
Yeah, I think if books didn't exist, I would have to go sit in a dark room and just cry for a long time, because it's such a rich part of life. I mean, in some ways, I've been inspired by so many different kinds of books, but as a gardener, it's like the lifeblood. I just kind of need it to keep inspired, to keep learning, to keep reminding myself that it is such a freaking big world out there of gardening. And so many people are doing so many great things. It's like, I find it really enriching and enlivening. I will not get wild foods in the same way. And I've already made, gotten out there and cooked up, found some garlic mustard, cooked that up, used a lot of little weeds that I find in my garden. So it's each one of these things is like, I'm integrating some of that wisdom with each book and becoming a better gardener, more sensitive to nature as a result.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, a really great thing about getting to learn about, in my case too, a lot of things I just really had no clue about, even before I got into gardening and growing and all that sort of stuff. And especially these wild forageable things that are growing out there that, I've we've always, like dandelions, always just considered a weed. We're trying to get rid of them out of our lawns, to make things look all nice and neat and everything. And then to come to find out that they're actually just, rich sorts of nutrients and a really great food, when it comes down to it, and all the other things. Like I was saying in the interview, I'm going to get out there and try to find some of that wild garlic now. I'm going to be on the hunt for that. I got to find some because I love garlic so much. I'd love to be able to find it wild like that. So that's really awesome and a great way to start our very first book of the month club.
Totally. I don't know if people watching noticed a couple of pages flipping like that, but I just want to recommend. I'm a big note taker, and I like to have my own companion notebook as I'm reading books. So you may have seen me. I was taking some notes there when I could of stuff Ellen was mentioning, and I love this practice of having a notebook. So I got a dedicated notebook here for all our books that we're going to read. I'll probably only be able to do like 5 or 6 books before I fill it up. But looking forward to having this record of this, time that we these books that we're dedicating in terms of gardening, and then my questions, follow-up notes, all kinds of stuff. So I always recommend that practice too. I always read with a pen and a notebook nearby because that's my way of engaging with the material and capturing the questions that are flashing across my mind and such.
Yeah, definitely. Got to try to retain things. I think we even touched on that for a little bit a second, but we're not getting it finger, Mark. Got to make sure I'm keeping notes of things so that I can remember that stuff. But
we got to just not let this stuff pass through, but we got to try to grab it.
Yeah. So definitely one more time, everybody, go check out How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying. It's an absolute beginner's guide to identifying 40 edible wild plants. There's some great things in here that you can find out in your area, community. Go out there and go take a look. Go find some stuff. Like I said, I'm going to go out and check out and see if I can find some wild garlic. Mark's going to get there out and check out some for some wild foods out there that again too an opportunity for us to try and taste and have some things that are just a bit different from what we're used to, even for us gardeners who get to grow so much of a different variety than what you actually get into a grocery store. That was one of the things I really loved about getting into gardening and growing some of those first foods that I got to grow was that opportunity to try new varieties of things. So foraging is just kind of a great extension of that.
Yeah. Enoch, I do want to say one thing to the folks who are with us today and anybody who may be joining, that these book groups, it's a low barrier, no guilt book group. So you don't even have to come to the program having read the book. That's the great thing.
Mm-hmm.
With an interest in the subject matter. And then maybe you'll go. I did see some comments of like, I'm going to definitely get this book. And I think that's what we're hoping to inspire.
Yeah.
Please don't feel in the future if you haven't read the book or haven't even had time to get the book. It can be an introduction to the book as much as a summary of the book. And, you're welcome to bring your questions, but also just feel like you could just tune into the program for the very first time and be encountering this book for the first time. And you're going to come away with something. Because I think anybody who listened to Ellen, even if you didn't even know anything about her book before this interview, you're going to be the wiser for just having heard 30 minutes of Ellen Zachos talking about forage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's a great point to make there, Mark, too, because we want everybody to be coming in and joining in and not only, getting an opportunity to enjoy the books. Like I said, we love books. We want to encourage people to get out there and read more books when it comes down to it. We're talking about gardening here on our channel and all of that. So we're talking gardening books and growing and all of that sort of stuff. So let's start talking about what we've got coming up, because this is just the very first.
Oh my God,
Mark, this is the very first.
We're coming up with a string of them, and I'm going to let you introduce the next one. I'm really excited. I'll hold it up here. Simplified Vegetable Gardening.
Yeah. Here, I got a real quick one for everybody to see right here. Simplify Vegetable Gardening with our good friend, and he's been a previous guest on the show as well too, Tony O'Neill from the UK, joining with us with his new book. Like I said, Simplify Gardening, Vegetable Gardening. I got to get that correct. Simplify Vegetable Gardening. His channel is Simplify Gardening. But Tony's a great gardener, someone I've been following for many years, and he's put together a really great book. We've actually been able to preview this book. It's been out now for about a month or so. We got ours because we intended Tony to be our first, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the show, was going to be our first book of the month club book, but we weren't able to kind of get that timing right, so we moved it and switched it over. So he's going to be next month's book of the month club for May.
Yeah, I like his. He's got a great little subtitle: "Veggie Gardening with a Side of Science." I like that. So he's
Yes.
For, the other thing I want to mention about a lot of these gardening books is there's just great pictures in here. I mean, you're not just all reading. It's like looking at the pictures, and he's obviously talented in growing monstrous vegetables, because he has some rhubarb leaves and stalks that are as big as him. And he's obviously been able to integrate some of these scientific principles and understanding how soil systems and the system of life work in his favor as a gardener. So I think that's going to be one of the big takeaways of this book, that we're going to get a little more sophisticated and really understand what's going on to be better gardeners.
Yeah, that was just right off the bat, just as a quick summary, because we're going to really dig into it as we get into our third week of third Sunday of the month, is what I would say. The third Sunday of the month, which will be, let's make sure I get this date right here. For May will be May 19th. So May 19th will be the day, and we'll have Tony on, and he's, like I said, this book is really good. Gets into the science of it, and it doesn't really feel like a really sciencey textbook, and like you're mentioning with the pictures, and you're really able to get in there and really see and kind of understand is what you're talking about. I found, just like the title it's simplifying gardening, simplifying vegetable gardening, and that's what he's really doing, is simplifying it, making it easy for us to take in and understand. So definitely encourage everybody to go check this book out. I believe I have a link down below too. I need to double check that for sure for that. But I do believe there's a link down below for that, so you can go and get a copy of this book, as well as we want to give one of these books away today. This is what we did last month for Ellen's book. We gave away a copy of the How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying, and luckily for us too, and we didn't really get to figure it out, but we got to Ellen to give a signed copy, which was nice. If we were able to do that with Tony, that would be cool. But we'll definitely get somebody a copy of Tony's book here today. And so what we're going to do is, and again, I kind of touched on this earlier, Jay did make a really kind of good suggestion, I think, is because we do have a lot of international viewers, when it comes to, that's one of the great things actually about being able to have a gardening show like this through YouTube. And what we do is that we're able to reach people from all over the globe and bring them into our gardening community. But at the same time, that does create some limitations for us when we're talking about doing these sort of giveaways, as I didn't think about last time as we did the book giveaway, because our winner was from Canada. And so when after picking our winner, was thinking about, it's only going to cost so much. But then I was thinking, well, if that becomes the case, because of that sort of possibility, I don't know if I have the budget ultimately to do that in the long run. But Jay did make a great suggestion that if you are international, you're in another country, Australia, UK, or something like that, and you wanted to cover for shipping costs or that sort of thing to be able to participate, then that's something possible. But we're going to do a giveaway here, and it is for those who are in the US. So let's see here if we get it. I know we've got a few people in with us too here, so I'm gonna put this up here if I can find it. There we are. Hashtag book club. So in the comments there, put in hashtag book club for the US there, and we'll see if we can collect a few of those there. And then when we do, we'll do a little drawing for a copy Tony's book, Simplified Gardening.
Nick, I'm going to jump in and say while people are doing that, one, I hope our listeners help spread the word for these interviews, because it is really a quality experience to have the author.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, one area that you excel in. It's just like this connection that you have and this fearlessness of just asking anybody to just be on the program with us. So I think this is a gigantic asset, not just in trying to approach these books on our own, but having the author there to answer our questions, to go deeper with material. I think that is just, it's one thing that makes me really want to be present every month, just to be listening in on this conversation and be part of it. And I hope our listeners appreciate just the kind of level of programming they're getting. And I think that's a credit to you, Enoch, and your ability to connect with people all around.
Well, I really appreciate that, Mark. Yeah, and it's one of the things that we kind of really pride ourselves on in the production and putting together of this show and everything, is to be able to make those connections with folks and to be able to do that and bring them in. And I think one of the things too that's really great about that and this book club is that we're promoting books, we're promoting reading and all of that, and books are great. We can read them, get so much knowledge from them, and it's so awesome that these authors take the time and put them together. But it's even better when you can take that one step further and bring them on to the show with us, and to be able to talk with them specifically about the books that they've put together for us.
Yeah, it's a great experience. And I always, like I said, I'm always curious about who is the person behind this stuff. And, even like Tony, next time he references a couple of times that he's a firefighter. And so it'd be like, all right, wow, this guy who's got this whole gardening side, he's also a firefighter. He's got a whole other part of his life. And how did he find the time to do this? And, just questions like these are the real people kind of questions that I love. I love finding out the backstory that really only the author has to tell. So that's a fun part of this whole thing too.
Yeah. And again, too, they're all, again, really interesting people, got a lot of great stories to tell of their own. And it's just such a great opportunity for us to be able to have them on the show with us. So again, too, also, I do have to make one note though about this next show too, because this will be one change that we are going to have to make in order to make sure that we can get Tony on the show with us. We will be a half an hour later than what we normally. So our show will start a half an hour later. We will talk about more of that as we get closer to it. Again, it is about a month away, but when we get towards that, we will make sure everybody knows that we are starting the show half an hour later than normal. So that will be something. But yeah, I'm really excited about moving forward. We got some other really great books that we'll be announcing as we move forward too. I think we're going to try to continue to do this same sort of thing where we, announce the new book at the end of our show, and then give away a copy, and then move on to our next month, give everybody an opportunity to be able to go out and get the book themselves. And also, I think what you said too is really important, Mark, is that even if you don't have the book or you can't get the book or that sort of thing, definitely come and join with us for the conversation and get to and get to hear from these great authors and learn a little bit more, because there's so much you can take away just from the conversation that we have.
Hey, Enoch, without giving too much away, I'm going to give a little spoiler alert for the third Sunday of July. It's going to be a laugh fest. That's all I'm going to say right now, a laugh fest. So you better get that one in your calendar. Third Sunday of July is a total laugh fest.
Yes, July is going to be, in fact, it's going to be great because me and you have actually got to go see this person a couple of times in person together. It's just great. We go to a gardening discussion and go to see a garden speaker to tell us about gardening, and we end up a comedy show.
So that's we're going to have, strengthen your stomach muscles because you're going to be laughing a lot in July.
Yeah. So lots of great ones to look forward to. We have some others as well in other coming months, and we're still putting together some other months and all of that. But they're all going to be great. It's just like I said, there's just nothing more better than to be able to get together with all your friends and talk about gardening and growing, and not only that, be able to invite these authors along with us for the conversation, and be able to learn just a little bit more about them and their books. So this book club, I think we're off to a really, really great start, Mark.
Great start. Are you
All right.
Nick?
Yeah. I think we've got a few in there. I just want to make sure everybody knows real quick, if you haven't yet, if you want an opportunity to win the book real quickly, I'll give just one more moment here for anybody who wants to. Last second, put in the comments section #book club. And then let's see here. Let's see if I can't do this. Share screen. There we are. Add to stage. There it is. Okay. And then let me go over here for #book club. And then we will run. Oh, it's got to collect the comments. And let's draw. The winner is...
I like how it's like a roulette wheel or something.
Well, look at that. Amazing. Well, this is great and awesome too.
That the Canada problem again?
Well, Jay, Jay's the one who gave us the great suggestion about paying for the shipping. So Jay said, I'm willing to pay the shipping if I'm the winner. So look at that. How lucky. And I'm really glad too. Really awesome to be able to have Jay win our book for our book club this time around. So definitely awesome. Jay's already got my information, so knows how to get a hold of me. Other than that, I was going to say for the winner to get a hold of me at letsgetgrowing@mail.com, or if you want to, you could send us an email too there if you're a viewer and have any suggestions for the show or anything like that. That's our email for the show. But I already know how to get a hold of Jay, and we'll get that book out to her too to real soon up there in Canada. So our first 2 book winners from Canada. How about that?
There you go. Maybe
we'll definitely make sure.
Maybe it's fitting that a UK author, part of the Commonwealth, goes to a Canadian part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly.
Keeping it in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and it's a hard one too, though. Again, too, when as I was thinking about that, it's just like, we do have so many great people who watch the show from all over the world. Even, we have a viewer who was in earlier with us from Australia. So it's kind of difficult, to have to run a contest for just a US only, but yeah, it's a great idea though, if people want to still participate like Jay there to take care of the shipping, and we can still make sure we get the book out to them too. So that's really awesome. And again, can't wait for this next month to talk to Tony about his book, Simplify Vegetable Gardening. And definitely go out and get yourself a copy of it and join with us for next month's book club as well too.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to it.
Yes, definitely. Awesome, Mark. Well, there we go. How about that, man? First book club all set in.
Woo, we're underway.
Yeah. And again, too, I really want to thank you too as well for participating and be a part of all of this sort of stuff. You've been a really great friend and such an awesome, willing participant in all of my shenanigans when it comes to gardening and making videos and doing all that sort of stuff. So I really appreciate it. It's really great to be able to share the screen with somebody and to be able to share kind of the excitement and the fun of all of this sort of thing that we get to do here on the show.
Yep, I love it. I'm loving it. And I'm with you all the way, Enoch. So thank you for the opportunity.
You betcha. Awesome, Mark. I'll catch up with you in just one moment. And everybody else, get down and check out all of our links below there as well too. All of our the author, the book let's put that up real quick. It's just having a heck of a show today. But How to Forage for Wild Foods Without Dying by Ellen Zachos, our feature gardener and author today. It was a great conversation with Ellen. I really appreciate it so much of her making the time to come out and talk with Mark and I and talk all about foraging and all of that other stuff, man. She talked, and you'll have to go back if you didn't get a chance to check out that conversation too. She talked all about this really great dinner she would put together with all these different wild foods. It was just really mouth-watering, and really it's had me hungry ever since that part of the conversation happened. But so many awesome things about foraging I didn't even know that I got to learn today from Ellen. So again, it's one of the great things about getting to have these conversations here on the Let's Get Growing show and the Urban Gardener channel, and have all of you along with us here to be able to learn so much more about things and gardening and all that sort of stuff that we didn't know before. So all right on. So that's really great. And again, too, want to make sure that let everybody know next week for Saturday and Sunday, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it both Saturday and Sunday as well. I just love doing the live streams anyways, but we are kind of on a break from the normal programming and having guests on the show. So we're kind of having a show break next week, Saturday and Sunday, but I will still be here 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, both Saturday and Sunday, to kind of have a fun just discussion and conversation about whatever's gardening and growing. In fact, on Saturday, I do have something I was planning on talking about. In fact, we kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking on yesterday's show, which I encourage everybody to go and check out as well too. We had our featured guest, the mocha gardener Ashley Thomas, with us yesterday for just a really wonderful conversation, and we talked just a little bit about something that's been on my mind lately, is a subject that and something that's kind of going on right now is it's one of those years, and it's one of those times in society where things are kind of however people feel and think about a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on. So I want to talk about common ground. I want to talk about the garden as a common ground. And we touched on that just a little bit yesterday. I think it's such an important conversation for us to be having. So next Saturday, come and join along with me there. We'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as other things and all of that, on just a great little live stream conversation between all of us together. And then we'll be back again the week after to get the show back up and going again with some more guests and all of that sort of great fun conversations about all of our favorite things, our gardens, our passion for growing plants and all of that. So definitely tune in with us again this next Saturday and Sunday, and then the week after as well too. So again, I really appreciate all of you joining with us here today. It's really awesome to have all of you here, and I love following along with the conversations that all of you get to have in the comments section there. So thanks again for joining with us on today's show. And again, I'll see you all this next week.